three wonderful presentations today by our discussants. We have had Mr. John Obidi, who spoke to the digital technologies for the new African economy. We've had Mr. Godbless Otubure, who spoke to youth leadership and governance for a new African landscape. And then the one we just concluded right now is by Prince Joshua Oyeniyi, democratizing education for the Africa we want. We've been receiving some questions, and please would encourage that on the Woover platform, on Zoom, and all other platforms where this program is going live, please type in your questions, and it will be a pleasure to present them to our panel of discussants today, and they will respond to it. To anchor this aspect of the program, please welcome with me Architect Oyeniyi. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremony. Well, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists once again, Mr. John Obidi, Godbless Otubure, and Mr. Joshua Oyeniyi. So we'll just take some questions right now. Please, if you're on the Woover app, feel free to drop in your question in the chat box. Use the section Q&A to drop in your question, so we'll pick that right now. We'd just like all of our panelists to be on standby as we respond to some of these discussion from their presentation. And for me, one of the things that I see recurring from the three presentations we've had is that there's a common denominator, which is education. Education cuts across digital economies. Education cuts across youth leadership and governance, and even formal education in the form of democratizing education. So I'll start with Mr. John Obidi with a question here. And Mr. John has been able to take us through, was able to walk us through the digital technologies for the new African economy, telling us about what we can produce as a continent and the skills and the critical skills we can engage with. So I know a number of young people, especially those across different part of the value chain, entrepreneurs alike, are watching, and one of the concerns for young people is education, especially the focus of, say, ICADI 2020, the right education. So they want to become stakeholders, right? They want to become stakeholders, whether they are in professional careers or in vocational careers. There's an African entrepreneur wants to take up his business enterprise to the global platform, or a professional service provider also wants to take his or her service to the global platform. And this crop of people are looking forward to how can they be stakeholders with what kind of right mindset? That's the real question in the mind of a number of persons now. What kind of right mindset do they need? Because in the third world, there's a whole lot of mindset depletion that has happened. So a young person now is trying to regain this momentum, break the inertia, as the Chancellor said in his presentation, and getting onto the global economy. What immediate mindset is needed to get that going?
Thank you very much. Like you rightly said, it's a mindset thing, and that has to change first before our people can become contributors to the global collective. The first thing we have to do is to switch our consumption habits. So in order to switch to production, we have to switch up the way we consume information. And so when I say consumption habits, I mean when it comes to the books that our people read and the educators that we expose our people to, they have to be tailored towards these technologies of the global economy. So there are platforms like Udacity, Coursera, where the conversation there is about future technology. So where they are in those environments where the discussion is predominantly how we can contribute to the global economy, things will begin to improve for them individually. The issue right now is that, and why there has to be a change in consumption, is that most of the information out there, especially in the Nigerian digital space, is on how people can do things like create online courses and sell e-books, and those things are good, but only on a subsistence level. I don't want an economy where Africans are being trained to be freelancers. That is good for subsistence, but not good for when we are becoming producers. Let other people do the work of being freelancers. We have to switch to creativity, and so people who get paid the most in the world or who are most respected in the world are those who are respected for their creativity. So not where we are the freelancers, where someone needs to design a website, they throw it to Africa, or where someone needs to create an app, they throw it to African freelancers. No, we have to be the ones to create these things. And so platforms that I've just mentioned are where the discussions going on can help to improve their minds. So people need to take on courses that have to deal with creativity, global business. You know, we're in an age where a good number of young people are not seeing the need for education anymore. They've got to understand why they have to understand the way the global world of business works, how creativity works, how money changes hands globally. And I think that that fundamental aspect of our education and exposure will begin to cause the change that we want to see.
Thank you so much, Mr. John Obidi. That's a key one, talking about the right education and the right exposure. I'm aware that Mr. John has always been a proponent of this, talking about education. I'm talking about formal education. Joshua was able to take us through how we can democratize education. And so someone is thinking here, I'm going to come back, Mr. John, a question just dropped for you, sir. But talking about formal education, democratizing formal education, what are the roles of non-formal education and informal education when we talk about the fact that not many people have access to school, enrollment issues? On the other side is that some are enrolled but actually are not learning. So what roles can non-formal education and informal education play in democratizing education for the Africa we want? Mr. Prince Joshua.
For the opportunity once again. I would like to state that, for people who are raised, on the African continent, it's important to note that for you to compete, both formal and informal education is important. And so, but when we talk about informal education and how it helps you to be able to to build yourself, to develop yourself, and then to be able to contribute to the kind of Africa that we want, it's important you understand, the norms, understand where you're coming from, understand, the culture. There are varying skills, all over the place. There are things you can learn outside the four walls of the school. I remember growing up, way back in a slum in Lagos, where I had a mother who taught me how to understand, the tenets of business, who taught me how to be able to sell, who taught me how to be able to trade. I didn't have to learn that in a school. And then, when I went to school and then I was able to learn a few things, it helped me to be able to bring both worlds together and then integrate them to give myself an edge. And you see, these things are so important. These norms that we have, this culture we have, we have this non-formal culture and norms somewhere, in the eastern part of this country, where we have people who train apprentices, and then after a few years of training them, they give them the opportunity to go start their trade and then give them some form of capital. That's non-formal, but then it's a major boost to economy. It's a major boost to ensuring that Africa is growing and is developing. And then you add that to formal education, you have the finest set of entrepreneurs, the finest set of web builders and creators who are contributing to economy, to society, to quality living, and of course the kind of government and the standard of living that we need and that we want in Africa. And so, all over the place, it's been a very amazing, rich heritage of learning, of opportunities, of privileges to learn these things and then give yourself the opportunity. I would remember, after learning all of these things, and in 2015, for example, I had an opportunity to present, to a set of about 8 to 10 international investors who came from all over the world to listen to undergraduates at the University of Lagos there when I was in the finals, and then who came to ask us, what have you learned about business? What have you learned outside the four walls of school? I didn't study business in the university. I read mathematics. But then these people told us, we need to know what you've learned. We need to know how you've been able to imbibe, your learnings in and out of the four walls of school into business, because I was going into business at the time, and that opened me to be able to dig deep from the well of learning that I had out of the four walls of school. And what that did for me was, enabling me to win the Global Student Entrepreneur Awards in 2015. That opened me to the world and then enabled me to stand on a global platform in the US and tell the whole world what we are doing back in Lagos, what we're doing back in Nigeria. And since then, it's been, an amazing journey. So I would say to young people, don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself. You're not able to assess, the kind of quality of education that you want. Don't stop at it. Keep growing. Keep giving your best shots at everything you can do to develop, to equip yourself. And then as you do that, one day the right opportunity will come, and then you will be very ready for it to take on it, and that will become the beginning of a whole new level for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, I don't know if Mr. Godbless is on standby. There's a 2-in-1 question for you here. You've been able to walk us through youth leadership and governance. I love the fact that you shared that young people are going to be the keepers of democracy. So even now that the age barrier has been dropped, right? But in the last political administration, and even in the last set of opportunity for young people, we found that the age barriers was not enough to even help young people to get into both offices and electoral positions. So what kind of right education do young people need beyond just the age barrier being dropped, which has already been dropped for a number of African countries? But what other kind of right education do young people need to be able to do well, even when they have that opportunity, whether it's an electoral opportunity or just any office across that value chain of governance? Mr. Godbless.
Great. I don't know if you can hear me, though. Can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So the first thing you need to understand about when you say the right kind of education to be able to perform as somebody who is serving in government is first a thorough liberal art education that makes the man to understand the sacred nature of public service. You see, the minute you don't understand the sacred nature of public service, you won't understand the kind of approach you should, go into government with or governance with. So beyond whatever we did with reducing the age to be able to run for office, or the fact that we are now saying we want to get over 900 young people elected by 2023, and that we are now keeping democracy and working with the US government and all other stakeholders to do that, is that first there needs to be an understanding of I am part of society. Let me answer this question with another practical example. When the Chinese government decided to study why Hong Kong and the protest was led by young people, why is it that in the face of tear gas, in the face of arrest, in the face of so much persecution, these young kids in Hong Kong were defying the mighty Communist Party and going out there to protest and say Hong Kong must be democratic? Why? Liberal arts education was found to be the reason. So for everyone who has been in our education sector that took out history and civics, they created the docile, let me use the word now, the almost docile and passive citizenry that we now have today. So when you don't have the right education that tells you that your place in the society is not just as an individual, but that you are connected to a whole, you would approach your coming into any kind of public office, whether as an appointed advisor or someone who runs for office, you approach governance from a place of contribution and know what you can get. That is why John F. Kennedy said, and I said to you, my fellow citizens today, do not think about what your country can do for you, but think about what you can do for your country. It comes from an understanding of your role as a contributor to the progress of the social contract called society. That is the kind of education that we need to imbibe in the hearts and minds of emerging young African leaders. And that is what we've been doing at IAGA, what we've been doing our Ready to Lead Africa, and that is what we're also doing at the Keepers of Democracy Initiative. So it is, look, it is ours to plow and not to plunder. So you come in there and you're thinking in that direction.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Godbless. I'll take the last round of questions from here, and I'll just start with you. There was a question here from someone on WOVA. It says, how do we practically influence the youth leadership in all environments and states to develop the mindsets required to drive change in this infrastructure, given that our entire institutions are driven by majority rule and opinions? I think it's driving out the fact that in Africa there seems to be this godfatherism behind governance. So how practically can that be altered and young people influence youth leadership? I think that's the question. I don't know if you can see it over from your end as well. That was from Okosa Lawrence. Mr. Godbless.
My answer to that wonderful question will be that I don't know if that person is in Nigeria, but if you're in Nigeria and you've been following what has been happening in politics lately, you can take it to the bank that that concept of godfatherism is dying and is an endangered species, and justifiably so. Because if you move a little bit from where Covenant University is and you go south, you're going to read in the papers, I think they're still making headlines, that a certain state decided that it was time for godfathers to be kicked out of the decision-making process, and the people went to the poll and elected, a governor who they believed was for the people. So my take to you is this: when you ask how can we, is to say, what are we doing now? What we are doing now is that there is a huge citizen education going on, both within the civil society space, and even within governance, and even within the political party structure. So one of the things I didn't say is that part of our strategy in reclaiming the nation and the next 20, 30, 40-year plan that we have is that we're going back there into the political parties and taking over the leadership of the political party, so that when the delegates are going to be determined, we have young people who are emerging from the process. And it's going to be democratic, because as I can tell you, is that our institutions currently are in the hands of people who don't understand the social contract, who don't understand that government is a sacred duty and a call, that you are living you're leaving a footprint, right, for oncoming generations. We have that idea, we have that knowledge. We've gone to other places, we've seen how it is done. We've been to Covenant University, and we've seen doing now. So whoever asks the question, this is my take to you as I round this up. Just believe, right? Just believe, play your part. If you ever find yourself trying to vote for the idea that you believe in, and not because some godfather said this is where we're going. No, that is how we build institutions. Institutions in themselves don't sustain themselves. It is the human beings behind the institutions. That is why today, even the United States, that is a big partner to what I do and the global work that we do, they're going through a lot of challenges right now, looking at the fact that a lot of the institutional framework that they put in place for years have now been threatened by the actions of people. So I just think it is not how can, it is what are we doing now? I want you to plug into it, okay, and then we can deliver this country.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Godbless. Mr. John, one question here. The first is, someone says, how do you intend to ensure that a huge number of third world internet users harness their engagement into productive use? A huge number of third world. How do you ensure, how can a huge number of third world internet users harness their engagement from consumption into engagement? And the second one is, what specific training program? Someone says on WOVA, is there an access to definite training programs that can enable us learn concisely these critical skills, some of the skills you mentioned, AI, virtual reality, and the likes? Mr. John Obidi.
Thank you for that question. I'll answer first. And I think that question was about whether there are platforms where young Nigerians or young Africans can learn these skills definitively. Yes, that is what Head Start Africa is committed to doing. So we're committed to bridging the knowledge gap. We hold free online summits like this. A couple of days ago, we just concluded the Monetize Summit 2020, attended by over 20,000 people, where we taught for free to Africans and some people all over the world specific skills that they can use to earn online legally. We also had the Head Start Summit, I think that was in May, June, where we also taught people how they could reinvent themselves for the new global economy. So that's what we're committed to doing, and anyone who wants to join that, it's free of charge to join the Head Start Africa community. It's a free Facebook group that anyone can join. So that's the second question. Now, the first question, and I know I choose to answer it in this order. How do I intend to ensure? I cannot ensure anything. It's left to the African youth. But let me say this. My answer to that's a bit philosophical, and I need you all to get where I'm coming from. I will relate the problem of African youth to what happened at the Tower of Babel. And so we know the story of the Tower of Babel. And, you know, these people were building a tower up to the heavens, and, you know, God and the heavenlies, they all said, you know what, these guys, look at these people, they're of one accord, they are resolute, they are diligent. If we let them on their own, they will build this thing up to the high heavens and so on and so forth. And so God, the story says that God came down, confused their language, and everyone scattered. That is happening and playing out not just in Nigeria, but all over Africa amongst the youth. There seems to be some conspiracy to empower wrong thinking, to fund wrong thinking amongst the minds of African youth. If you are someone who is speaking on social media in favor of university education, you are the exception. It is a weird, crazy reality, but trust me, this is my experience. And so there's a lot of people who honestly believe that university education is a waste of time. A lot of them. And so a lot of the work that I do is in pushing and changing the narrative, because see what the conspiracy is. This is a very dangerous thing to even think about. There's this elite group of people who are very well behind it. So they would sponsor reality TV shows. They would sponsor all those things, knowing that the youth cannot differentiate between their left from their right. And so their choice becomes their prison. They say things like, oh, it is your choice. Of course we know that when we put these choices before you, you will take the path of least resistance. You will take the path of entertainment. You will take the path of easy stimulation like sports, because education, honestly, is hard. But that hard is what will give us our place in the League of Nations. And so there are these conspiracies to just keep on funding entertainment, funding all these initiatives, and leaving the true path to the descendants of the elite. And so in 20 years, something dangerous will happen if we do not intervene. Something dangerous will happen. We'll have people of our generation who in 20 years, when it is time for them to be in leadership, maybe less than 20 years, I don't know. In 20 years, they'll be armed with no skills aside how to post to Facebook. And that is dangerous. Those who will have the actual skills of how to create policy, how to do public administration, how to do international affairs, diplomacy, and all that, will be the few children of the elite who were put on that straight and narrow while they feed the masses with garbage, such as how to be the next reality TV star, or how to be the next musician, or how to try and spend a lot of money doing sports betting and all kinds of betting, hoping that one day, they won't go better. All right, and so there is that, it is huge. And so that question is not so straightforward. How do I ensure? I cannot ensure. A lot of us doing this work are somehow like John the Baptist, the voice of one, crying out in the wilderness. But all we can do is talk. It's left for the African youth to choose. And as Moses told the children of Israel, I place before you two paths, life and death. But I implore you, I urge you, for your own sake, choose life.
Thank you so much for that amazing response. I will take the last words of Mr. Joshua, but someone just dropped a comment here. I just like to read it quick before I take the last words for Mr. Oyeniyi. Bestford says, to innovate in the education system, one must be thinking of innovation through collaboration and be prepared to listen, because innovations take time. and you have to be willing to take the journey with the community you serve. Thank you for that comment. Mr. Prince Joshua, what are the last words on this, democratizing education for the Africa we want?
Thank you so much for the opportunity you've given to me to be able to have these closing remarks. And what I would like to say is there is this, fear that the rest of the world has about Africa and then our potential. And then it's high time that we stood up and then occupied our place in the polity of nations. And how do I mean? I'm happy that, the bulk of speakers at this event are young people, because indeed, not only are they, the future of this continent, they are indeed the drivers and, of course, the actors in that future. And so it's important that we engage. It's important that we go beyond engagement to implementation. And that's very surreal, because even outside of the continent of Africa, there are conversations about how Africa can be great, about how people can be able to tap into and harness their innate potentials and abilities, and then help to build the continent. And so all that we're doing this afternoon, my brothers John and Godbless, is just to say, the young people should treasure the right things. We should move from just talking and then wasting time on frivolities and vanities into going into the real stuff. And the real stuff, is about ensuring that you walk on the path to greatness. And that is through education, the right kind of education. It's about investing your time and youthful energies and zest in the things that will lead you to becoming a power player in the next, in the next few years. Like Lagbaja, the popular Nigerian musician, said, nobody will give you power. And I'm talking about both economic power, financial power, political power, but you have to rest it. And so by resting it involves you empowering your mind, empowering yourself with the right kind of education. Between March and July this year, I spent all of the peak of the COVID-19 period in New York, and then I had engagement with professionals and youngsters from different parts of the world where, I had the opportunity to go speak and then to talk on certain matters. And I realized that there is so much that the world thinks Africa can give, but unfortunately, we're not coming out to play. We're not coming out to the platform. And then the few of us who are doing this are just seen as, the tiny bits of light all over the continent. But that needs to change. And that must change by ensuring that beyond conversations like that we have, many thanks to ICADI for the opportunity, we enable and we empower and we encourage all our young people to go out there, take the future in their hands, invest in themselves, and let's build together the continent of Africa for the future of the quality and our generation. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I want to, at this junction, appreciate all of our panelists for their time. The winner of the Global Student Entrepreneurs Award, West Africa, and the convener of the Ambassador Summit, Mr. John Obidi, the new media consultant, founder, EdStart Africa, and Mr. Godbless Otubure, the Lagos State coordinator, Not Too Young movement, and the founder of Ready to Run. I want to say thank you so much. We can keep the conversation going. For questions we couldn't take, let's keep it going on the Wover platform. You could drop the question on the section of Q&A, and you could even create a community where other people can engage in areas of choice discussion. And feel free to send in question in your feedback to any of the speakers, even on using the app, the Wover app. And please, if you're online on social media, please engage with the hashtag #CICADI2020 as we get this going. Thank you so much for the time. I hand over to the MC, Dr. Larry Amodu.
This has been a very rich session. It has to be something that we carry on from here. That is why I'd like to emphasize what my colleague just mentioned now. We want to keep the conversation going. We don't want it to die here, so please engage. Your questions that we could not take because of time can still be taken on the Wover platform and some other platforms. So please send in your questions. From our own end, they will type all the social media handles and all the connections that we can have. Please, they will type it in so that you can see it. Engage. Our panelists will also respond to you because we'll make an arrangement where they can be on these platforms and respond. And for as long as this conference is on, they also have access to the platform. So please, share your thoughts. They help to enrich this conversation where we can actually change the future of Africa and create a world where our youth don't become entertainers alone, but they can become expert thinkers that can actually design policies that can shape the future of our nation. Thank you very much. Please, once again, can you appreciate our very, very rich collection of panelists? Thank you so much. We're excited to have you here. And just like they expressed, we will not end our relationship here. We are looking forward to engaging them even more in the future in Covenant University.